If you look at the Sequoias, the A16Zs of the world, they have one thing in common. They're all founders before they become VC. And I believe that it's extremely important to invest with somebody that has that startup and founding experience.
In the world of AI, speed is a battlefield. You cannot afford to have a learning curve. Your learning curve is your deployment. You learn from this and you iterate.
Interesting. I can see there's a lot of newcomers in sort of VC world. What is the common sort of mistake that you see?
I think it's very simple to think that just by getting exposure, you're going to win. It doesn't work this way. The business of investing in an AI value chain is difficult. It requires to be inside all the time.
Totally agree.
What would be your one piece of advice to founders who are looking for investment, who are building AI ventures at the moment? So today we have another important conversation on AI. And I brought these two extraordinary people. I'm a big fan of both of them. And today we want to unpack a very interesting topic. It's all about the investments in AI in this industry. Everyone's talking about AI. And we will hear from two people who actually do these investments as a day job. Perhaps I could give you a little bit of context. So Esther, previously, before she started the fund, she helped one of the first generation of unicorns in the AI space, SenseTime, to raise over $7 billion. And then she's now actively investing in AI, focusing on AI infrastructure. While Antoine, unlike also many other VCs who are jumping into this AI space, he has been in this industry for almost 25 years. And Antoine is known for, in his previous job, he was the one engineer and his team behind the technology that later became known as Siri. So both of you went through a lot of cycles, hypes. What are your observations of today's AI craze? Where we are now in this cycle? What's your feeling?
So thanks for having me, Anton. Always a pleasure. So I think there's a lot of talk about AI having a bubble or no bubble. But I want to step back a little bit to talk about the structure of capital today versus 5 years, 10 years ago. So as Anton just mentioned, I started my own VC firm 2 years ago. My VC firm, Fund 1, was about 100 million. Fund 2 is trying to raise around the same or slightly more. But you realize that starting from 5, 6 years ago, in fact, majority of these so-called VC funds, the size is actually over $1 billion. So as of 2024, as of last year, 80% of so-called VC fund is above $1 billion. 10% of those is actually above $5 billion. So before we talk about whether it's a bubble or not, you got to understand that there's a lot of money investing in this VC sector. So previously, when we were doing investment, a seed round could be, say, $50,000, $100,000. These days, I'm sure there are a lot of investors among the audience. You easily see seed round raising 10, 20, even $50 million. So there is an overall inflation of the price tag of investment. And that's not just pertain to AI, but it just so happened that AI is the topic du jour. So you can see a lot of so-called bubble in AI. That being said, though, we're going to elaborate this in the conversation. But I do believe that we're in a very, very, very early stage of AI still. But where to invest? There is some kind of difference of opinion. But I think the whole cycle itself is still super early.
Would you agree, Antoine? Are we early stage in this cycle?
Yeah, so I'm not so sure we're. Look, the question of whether we're in a bubble, not a bubble. I invested in OpenAI 3 years ago, 27 billion. Okay, you expect to make maybe a 3x, 4x return at 27 billion. It's a lot of money. But here they are not today at 500 billion. Why are they at 500 billion? It's because in 3 years they went from essentially zero, almost zero revenue, to high teens this year, potentially 20 billion. No one has grown so quickly. And if people think about OpenAI, a lot of people will think about it as being a model company, but in fact, it's not a model company. It's a product company. And no one has built a product that has grown and driven revenue so quickly in the history of mankind. And why is this? The why is this is because human intelligence rules this world. And intelligence has created this. Our intelligence has created this. But the moment we start to invoke machines and we start to augment, to transform, to disrupt every single product workflow decision, the moment we do that, it's no longer a world of human intelligence. It's a world of human plus machine. And what is this worse? So effectively, I think when we invest in machine intelligence by proxy, we're actually investing in the economy as a whole. So I think people said in 25 years ago, this time it's different, right? With an internet bubble 1.0. And I think the internet was a delivery mechanism, a delivery and access mechanism. But I think we can say that this time is different. Why? Because it's not about delivery access or anything like this. It's about producing. It's about decision making. It's about everything we do every day. So I am very bullish. I think we're still very early.
So you mentioned OpenAI, and if you look at the companies that are driving this investment on the investment side, at least, so you see companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, and highly profitable companies, which means it's not 1999 anymore.
Correct.
But however, do you think it's a sign of that we're kind of in industrial age of this bubble, or we're still in the early stage of hype, like you referring?
So maybe I can start. So yeah, first of all, you see big tech, which is driving a lot of cash flow, investing a lot of money into this. So it's not 99 2000. You have a lot of money being generated and being reinvested. Okay, that's number one. So there's pull, right, from big tech. But and I think number two, and I'm sure you'll talk about this, today it's still about, a lot of it is still about creating the foundational infrastructure for this revolution. That foundational infrastructure is data centers, it's models, and it's what's around, which means systems, pipelines, as in data pipelines, cyber platforms, and the like. So, though I am beginning to see, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, the beginning of ramp at the application layer. So yes, we're starting with foundational stuff, but eventually, and I think we're starting this year to see growth in applications in simple stuff, and I'll give examples. Next year and the year after is going to start to become more involved in terms of complexity and the quality of companies we see.
Continue on this when we get back to the application, but Esther, you're advocating one specific area. You're only looking on the infrastructure level, right?
Very much.
And as I know, we just had a conversation. Esther just flew from the US where she witnessed the launch of the Starship to the space with this company that does the satellites for AI compute in the space. So that's how far we look at on the infrastructure level. But do you see this horizon of infrastructure return on investment is kind of a VC job to invest in?
I think we're still super early on the foundation infrastructure of AI. So we are way too early in the application. I think that's where me and Antoine slightly different opinion. So I don't touch application companies. And I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example, right? So I invest in a company called Cerebrus. I don't know how many of you heard about this company before. I see.
I've heard of it.
Yes, 5 hands, okay? 6. So what does Cerebrus do? Cerebrus is a chip company. They make wafer scale engine chips, size of my head, that when it runs inferencing is 50 times, 50 times faster than NVIDIA GPU. You know what it means? Because now that we're entering AI 2.0 and people are using AI, not just training AI, and we are going to be AI 3.0 very soon, when the majority of consumer of AI is AI itself. So you got to understand that the ecosystem that one create from walking to having a bicycle versus from walking to going to the rocket is two different ecosystems. So right now, I completely disagree that we should invest in the ecosystem based on bicycle, because ecosystem should be based on rocket. And that ecosystem is only emerging as we speak. So that's why I think, first of all, it's way too early. Now, I want to give you another set of data. So as I said, these days, a lot of so-called VCs, a mega billion dollar. So last year alone, VC invested $200 billion in AI, okay? 200 billion with a B. Now imagine, for a lot of us here are investors, LPs or VC ourselves, let's say you have a 3x or 4x portfolio, so 12, 14% return every year, that seems reasonable. By the time you have to give your money back to your LPs, you're talking about $700 billion worth of return. Now, VC usually don't own 100% of the company. Let's be generous and say they own 10%. That means your portfolio company has to return $7 trillion every year for the next 5 years. How many $7 trillion company exit do you see? I mean, this one of the most successful IPO this year in the US market is a company called Figma. As many of you probably invested in it, $25 billion exit. You need 100 Figma every year. I mean, is that possible? Answer is obvious. So I think there's going to be a substantial amount of casualty if you invest in the wrong sector. And for me, investing in anything application layer is the wrong sector. So we don't touch that.
I'm sure Antoine has a different opinion on this.
So first of all, I'm a big believer still in investing in infrastructure. I do about 40 to 50% of my investments.
But the 60% is
in infrastructure, right? Because I think it's a really important thing to build out the infrastructure that's going to deliver value at the application layer. Now, the application layer, here's what's working today. And there's plenty of things that are not working, but here's what's working. I'll give you examples. We have a company called Hicksfield in San Francisco. This is a video, it's a Gen AI video orchestration layer company. So if you think about video generation, Google has a product, OpenAI has a product, Kling has a product. So like VO2, VO3, excuse me, from Google, Sora 2 from OpenAI. This is the camera. It gives you the raw content, but then you have to have a director that orchestrates the entire process to give you a world-class, distributable, playable video, whether it's on TikTok, on YouTube, or whether it's corporate marketing, like the wonderful video that you released about Samantha. This is what you need, this orchestration layer. And this is a company that released its product in January of this year. By July, 6 months in, they had $50 million of revenue, 50. I can't tell you the revenue today, but it's much more than 50. These guys are sending checks to OpenAI that are very substantial every day. And why are they working? It's because they've simplified the business of delivering value to users in a way that makes it possible, right, for users to very quickly, within minutes, deliver video. So it's a narrow use case, simple, and at that level today, AI is reasonably friction-free, and that's how you get traction. But there's plenty of stuff, and that's where you have to invest. There's plenty of stuff that's friction-full, that's complicated, and that's where you should not invest. And that's going to happen 2, 3, 4 years from now, but not today.
But do you feel like it's going to be commoditized at some point? The entry level, the ticket is becoming cheaper and cheaper. Everyone is building this on top of the existing LLMs. How do you see this in a span of like 5 to 10 years from now?
Most of what I do is future-proofing the investment that I make, right? And how do you future-proof? You look at whether the team that you invest in understands very deeply the scientific and technological capabilities, but also limitations of what they're using, and how to plug these gaps, and how to stay ahead of the curve. So this company released 12 products in less than 6 months, 12. So, and I said at some point that in the world of AI, speed is a battlefield. It is a battlefield, right? It's if you have to be, you don't have a learning curve. You cannot afford to have a learning curve. Your learning curve is your deployment. You learn from this and you iterate and you iterate. This world is going to be fast.
I totally agree with you. And even our experience with Samantha, I'm not sure how many of you had tried the Samantha, our AI agent that helps you to connect between the people, but it's such an interesting journey. It took us 8 months of the entire engineers team, like 6 people, to build this together. Things like, because we're building something that didn't exist before, and there's no like a playbook, there's no template.
Yeah.
You have to learn on the go, how to create this orchestration of
100%.
different agents behind that. It's very complex.
100%.
Plus, a big part of the backend is built with the traditional languages, but then the front end is conversational.
Yep.
And there's a lot of prompting, which is programming language, which is English. It's crazy how these things are very new, very novel, and like you said, learning by doing. But I want to ask Esther, when it comes to application layer,
Yeah.
you're not buying into it, but
No, but don't get me wrong, though, Anton. I do believe that we have amazing founders right now, even in this room, including yourself, Anton, for these application, for these AI-enabled application. And we're witnessing here in this venue, the first generation of AI native founders. So I am very bullish on the ecosystem that AI application can provide to society as a whole to benefit our economic growth and all those stuff. I'm not against it. So there's a difference between how I see the economic impact versus for investment, because we're talking about investing. We're talking about people's money, my own money and other people's money. So a lot of us here are old enough to remember the internet bubble. So how many of those shopping.com, askjeeves.com, Groupon.com you invested before you hit Amazon? I mean, the sea of casualty is massive. And I'm not saying that Amazon is not worth something. Of course, it's worth a lot. But I'm just saying that for application, it's harder to find the Amazon versus for infrastructure. And that is the more responsible way of investing.
But for infrastructure, you need a way longer horizon to see the profit.
Yes, but also
commercial success.
Yes, but that also means that if you do infrastructure, because the entry barrier is significantly higher, that means that your potential failure rate is actually slightly less. I mean, let me explain that. So, for instance, if you invest in chips, you cannot have one person wake up and say, I want to start and sell my company. But you can have one person to say, I want to start an AI application company. And because the entry barrier is relatively lower, you will eventually see a lot more competition. Versus if you want to do semiconductor investment, you know you need a group of engineers, you know you need $500 million to do tape out, so that the entry barrier is higher. Not to say that it won't fail, plenty fail, but it's just that it's easier to identify the winners, and winners tend to win significant portion. So for our investment strategy, we do the barbell approach, right? Either we do super, super early stage, like Anton mentioned, we are one of the earliest investor of the world's first space data center. So I came back from SpaceX 2 days ago. That's why I'm a little bit jet lagged. But we are very, very early in that investment. Again, infrastructure for the future. Or we do super late stage, so pre-IPO. So this way, investors' money is more protected, right? Because for super late stage, you know that there's an exit. For early stage, you know that you can control when to exit because you have more options. You don't have to wait for IPO. You can exit when they do the next round and so to speak. So that's why.
Interesting. I can see there's a lot of newcomers in sort of VC world at the same time. Like the VCs are becoming larger, but then you can see a lot of family offices are jumping into AI investment. What is the common sort of mistake that you see that's most often made by the people who are going into this sort of ocean of possibilities?
Yeah, I think it's very simple to think that just by getting exposure, you're going to win. It doesn't work this way. I think Esther mentioned it well. This is difficult. You know, the business of investing in an AI value chain is difficult. It requires to be inside all the time. It's a very dynamic space.
Totally agree.
And also, there's some very hidden ways to make money. Like, let me give you an example. We have a company that he's selling into workflow enablement into insurance, like claim processing, for example, right? This seems to be extremely boring, right? And how are you going to play that? It turns out that most insurance companies design their health policies to be not reimbursable, right? So when you make a claim handler has all the reasons in the world to reject your claim. Of course, for regulatory reasons and also for marketing reasons, they're not going to reject all the claims. They're going to reject 10, 15% of the claims. But when you do that, you rely on the subjective judgment of your claim handlers. As you begin to replace and augment these claim handlers with machines that are now looking at every single claim and giving you a green or a red flag, as a P&L owner, as a CEO of a large insurance company, actually now you're in control of your business. So I was talking to a large asset manager recently in the UK who told me, and we see it because we're selling to these companies, and he sees it because he's investing in the Alliance and the AXA of the world, and he's seeing how these CEOs now are telling him, yeah, I have a better control of my business now because of AI, a much better control of my business, my P&L. To me, that's very interesting. Unless you're inside and you can actually see how these are being deployed, you don't know. So, I'm as a public investor, investing in large insurance companies doesn't seem very sexy. But at the end of the day, you will see how over time there's an AI play there. So there's many ways to play this. You just have to be very smart.
And Esther, what piece of advice for those who are diving into world of investment in AI?
So I see this very funny phenomenon when you think about this part of the world versus US, because I do a lot of, I do investment in both sides, but for my new venture, I just focus outside of China. I noticed that a lot of the VC/PE in this part of the world, in Asia, in China, they have a finance background, very, very strong finance background. So they've been investing in many, many years, sometimes decades. They invest in, renewable energy. They're expert in renewable energy. They're expert in EV. They're expert in AI. So they have a lot of finance interest. But you notice that the partner in the Western PE firms, if you look at the Sequoias, the A16Zs of the world, they have one thing in common. They're all founders. They used to found company before they become VC. Now, I appreciate the fact that Antoine also started, as a founder. And I believe that it's extremely important to invest with somebody or put your money with someone that has that startup and founding experience. Because I was very blessed. I had both, right? Before we started SenseTime, I spent 20 years in banking. So I see the finance side of things. But I can, hand to my heart, I can say that I was in SenseTime for 7 years. I learned much, much more in the first 2 years at SenseTime than 20 years in banking combined.
For sure.
The vantage point is so different. And I think without that, you cannot be a good VC because you don't know what you're looking at. And that is something that I think you mentioned family office, because we talk to a lot of family office. And for family office to get exposure in AI or any new subject, one way to do is invest on their own, which is happening right now, which is perfectly fine. But if you have access to GP that have genuine founding experience, then why not, right? Because one very smart friend of mine said one thing I totally agree. There are two things in the world you can leverage. You can leverage people and you can leverage money. So if you have that, why not take advantage of that?
We're almost running out of time, but I know there's quite a few founders in this room. If they are going to pitch you, we'll catch you after you leave this session. If you could just give us like a 30 seconds advice, what would be your one piece of advice to founders who are looking for investment, who are building AI ventures at the moment?
For me, because I look a lot at fundamental AI research and I look at a lot of frontier ones, I will give preferential treatment to founders that have paper published, because I read paper on a very regular basis. All my team does. So if you tell me you wrote whatever paper, I sort of knew what kind of area do you focus on. And so I know whether I want to spend more time to sit down and speak with you. I also, that is on the macro level, micro level, but on the macro level, I want to see how you envision your AI would change the AI world in the next 5-10 years. So give me the micro and the macro version of your startup.
Yeah, for me, it's two things. Tell me why you understand or you do the science better than anyone else, one. And two, tell me how you're going to outcompete on speed. Because if there's a market, if there's a use case for your stuff, everyone knows it. And so where you're going to be differentiated is your knowledge of the science and the technology. And number two, how quickly you get to execute. If you don't have one or the other, I'm not going to talk to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We run out of time. Please give a round of applause for our speakers. And
Thank you. Thank you.